a lot of the imagery that I've used in my work, how we compute, how we represent things and ideas, is about electronics and about speed, the speed of information. So those are my subject and my tools. And I think that it doesn't make, for me, any kind of conundrum to use tools to criticize tools. So I think it's an appropriate way to do it. Everybody has this love-hate relationship with technology. Everybody. There's not anybody who doesn't say, well, some of it is okay. And there isn't anyone who says, it's so too much, it's destroying my life, you know. There's, and everywhere in between. So my response has always been to try to not blame technology for things. It's just stuff. It's just pieces of plastic. You know, it's like, you don't want to be the, you know, Spanish Inquisition who's burning the books. It's not the books and the writing that were the problem, the technology of their times. It was how people used things or their perception of how you use knowledge. So tech stuff is just junk. It's plastic, you know. And so to blame technology is like blaming a pencil. It's ridiculous, ridiculous. But of course, we don't want to blame ourselves and our ineptitude.
What Fassbinder film is it? The one-armed man comes into the flower shop and says, what flower expresses days go by? And they just keep going by endlessly, pulling you into the future. Days go by, endlessly, endlessly pulling you into the future. And the florist says, white lily.
I believe that we have the power to shape things. I think we have the power to design things, and that people forget that you have that power. Even, let's say, in terms of your own personality. Let's say, you know, something bad happens and you want to scream, you want to like, ah! And you say, like, you know what, but I'm not the kind of person who would scream. But you still want to scream anyway. And I see that as a kind of design problem. That when you design your personality, you made it just a little too small. You know, you designed it as someone who would not scream. And so you go and look at that. Of course, we inherit things from our parents. And of course, we do get things from our fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters and all of the other things in our genes. But we also shape them ourselves. Partially, we have the ability to shape. We're not just children of destiny. So you can go back in and make another kind of design that would say, okay, I'll be the person who could scream if I wanted to. I could. You don't have to, but don't disallow that possibility. Why are you limiting your freedom all the time? Why not just be anybody who could do anything? You know, you have to like design this little Facebook, whatever, ridiculous person, and then you're frustrated because you're caught in the limitations of it. Who designed that? Well, you did. So go and redesign it. Tinker with it. See what else you could maybe, you know, get out of your little prison. Well, I understand why people would be resentful of the United States. I mean, but I'm somebody who travels a lot, and I often get that kind of reaction of like, how could you live there? Oh, they're like hypnotized people. They're zombies. Now, part of that is bad press. I have to say, it's just like that. I don't know why that kind of shorthand is useful. I think it's really maybe part of why we put music and art in different bins, the same way we put so-called people's national characteristics in bins, which is, I mean, of course, there's a little bit of truth to that, but there's not a lot. So my example of that was, this kind of beautiful girl in high school who says, and who knows that people don't like her, and she said, well, people hate me because I'm beautiful. And you have to say, I'm sorry to say, people don't hate you because you're beautiful. They hate you because you're a jerk. You could have your own like fantasy about why people hate you. But usually it has to do with your behavior towards them, frankly. In other words, that you don't feel that they like you. And we're all so self-centered. We just, that's what we think. So I think that the reality is that of any empire or would-be empire is that they have a sense of entitlement. It's happened every single time there's been a power situation in which, by default or some reason, one guy's left standing. And out of the Cold War, the United States was the one guy left standing for a minute. And who likes them? Nobody, British Empire, Roman Empire, take your pick, No, it's not that people like America now that it's falling apart any better, but, maybe it humanizes people here a little bit. And what scares me about, though, what's happened since in the last 10 years is the amount of repression that there is in this country, and that's very shocking to me. And so it makes the potential of resistance even more exhilarating because it's you have to push very hard against that kind of repression. Many of the issues that have been really important aspects of American culture, particularly the increasing poverty, have been hidden. And people don't talk about the fact that 27% of Americans live below the poverty level. And really, the other ones are so close to that it's almost 40%. This is not a rich country. This is a very poor country in that way. So that's not a language Americans speak, because we're ignorant, and we don't, and somewhat delusional and asleep. But one of the good things about the economic crisis is that it has created a lot of empathy, and some people kind of going, wait a second, I'm not alone. So people in Occupy Wall Street who identify themselves as the majority, as opposed to many groups who almost, our last revolution, the ones who were doing the most social activism put themselves really apart and said, we're the student activists, we're the smart ones, we're the counterculture, we're reacting to the main. And this is not the case now. This is people saying we are the mass majority. America thinks it's such a rich country. We're not. As I said before, we have a huge number of people living below the poverty line. And our education system, our healthcare system, many things are dysfunctional here. And I think most Americans would have a lot of troubles talking about what we mostly do in this country, what our main industry is. Our main industry is war and destruction and manufacture of weapons. And that's what we do more than anything else. I think Americans would have a very difficult time saying that. They would maybe we'd talk about security, we'd talk about this different things, but we wouldn't say, no, our main industry is war. I think Americans are very good-hearted, very generous people that are caught in a massively abusive, crazy system that is crushing everyone. It's not just those people over there. Everybody in this country knows someone who's lost a house or a job or whose opportunities are getting smaller and smaller. And so it's not something over there. It's something that you know about. And so I find that enormously exciting. I see so many really young people who are incredibly smart, very together, much more together than we were as revolutionaries. We were like just drugs, music, it was like, it was great. It was, as I said before, a little bit more niche-oriented because that was driven by the draft. That was driven by the fear of college boys being killed in a war. And it was a real fear. And we were afraid of that. And we wanted to make sure that they weren't dragged off to a ridiculous war and killed. We didn't want them to be killed. We liked our boys. We loved our boys. So we fought for that. For us Americans, it doesn't matter who we vote for anymore, really. Politicians really don't have power to change things. They're quite dysfunctional. And banks, anyway, could just go, crush them. It's really about reinventing the norm. Because in the United States and in a lot of places in the world, because this is a global movement, the norm is greed and cruelty and criminal behavior. And that means basically what the government is engaging in. And that is the norm. And so one of the ideas of Occupy is to spread this idea of another way to create another reality, to create another norm that is based on people helping each other, not in competition. I was on tour for most of the summer, and I went through a number of these cities in Europe and spent time as much as I could with the movements. And so in Madrid, back in May, the creation of the city in the square was very inspiring, but the thing I was most inspired about was the practicality of it, because so the Spaniards go, okay, well, how do banks make their money? Well, one of the ways, and one of the biggest ways, is supersonically fast electronic transfers of money. What money? Your money, going over borders very, very, very fast. Do they pay tax on it? No. So the Spanish organizers did some quick calculations and realized that if you tax those supersonically fast electronic money transfers, known as electronic money, not even money. This is trading in futures. And speaking of the future, because you're trading on the possibility that something could be made. It's not made, it's not a thing. So you're trading on futures with kind of play money. And so they said, okay, tax that at 0.01%, and in 2 weeks, the Spanish debt would be erased. We will all work very hard at what we do. We make a lot of things. We grow a lot of food. We have a lot of energy. It's not for lack of that. It's not for lack of resources or ingenuity. But we are being robbed. And people are just waking up to this fact. Just realizing, wait a second, not just me, not just him, not just her, but over in, other parts of the world and other parts of your country. So when you make that realization, then you say, well, okay, now I know that. What am I going to do about that? Whatever you do. I mean, myself as an artist, I'm somebody who makes images and creates situations. So this is what I'm committed to at the moment, is how to imagine another world. What would that look like if you really didn't have the agenda of getting everything for myself, The market keeps rising. The big machines control the sea and the air. Those big machines, they gotta go somewhere. So we keep calling them up, calling them up, no matter what. And then those questions come, like, was the Constitution written in invisible ink? Is everybody here forgotten how to think? Is this great big boat starting to sink? Pinpoint nukes, ready to fight, just to kill. Sure, right. Welcome to the American night. We just keep calling them up, calling them up. I think more and more that as we become closer to machines, we need to look more at animals, spend more time with animals, to just kind of reset things, A lot of people I know talk more like machines now than people, and run their lives as if they're part of a machine, or have mechanized a lot of their lives instead of just, and are part of a bigger machine as well. One of my favorite books now is called How to Be Idle by Tom Hodgkinson. It's a really beautiful book about why you work. Now, animals would not have to read this because they don't work. They have no jobs. They're just hanging out. So anyway, one of the things he talks about is illness, when you get sick. Now, in the United States, you're expected to pretty much work through it. If you get sick, you're a wimp, sort of like, so you would have to toughen up and, a different attitude. There's At one time when people would go after it was called convalescence. After you got better, you would spend some time resting. Go to the south of France for 3 months and breathe the salt air and don't think a thing. Genuinely take some time off, but time has become so tyrannical now. You know, nobody can take even 30 seconds off. So Tom Hodgkinson suggests, you know, plans you had this afternoon, why don't you just cancel them and go and have a beer with your friend whole afternoon? Or go take a long walk, or just go down and sit by the river for a few hours. Most people are like, what? I'm way too busy for that. You know, so it's like, he uses another example of illness, which is like, he cites a British headline in a newspaper that says, British lose 500 million man-hours this year to illness. And you look at it, you realize, since when did I owe Britain my man-hours? And now, whoops, they're coming up short because I was sick. Who are you working for? Who do you owe this to? You know, what are you doing it for? A lot of people don't even have the chance to ask that question because they're too distracted by the amount of work that they have to do to catch up in this ridiculous race that people are in now to get stuff. And of course, you in that race to get the new iPhone, the new iPad, the new whatever, the new car, the new house, and you will never guarantee to ever, never, ever, ever have enough. There will never be a time when you go, that's it, because it's back on the treadmill. It's the way late capitalism works, you know. So this is why it's a great thing that this economic collapse is happening. Maybe people will go, you know what? Not working isn't so bad. It's kind of nice. Why am I killing myself with this job? What am I hoping is going to come from that? What great thing is going to come from that will make my life suddenly really worth it? What big award am I going to get? In terms of reinventing a norm, one of the things that would be, and reimagining what that kind of future would be, is to start with another complete set of goals, you know, really, and that's not as hard as you think it might be, because when I meet a lot of these kids from Occupy Wall Street, they already have those kinds of values in place. You know, they're not in this same rat race that my generation is. They're not. And they are willing to, maybe because they haven't had the opportunity to be it. If you look at the signs of Occupy Wall Street, is I will never own a house. I will never have a job like that. You know, you realize, oh my God. And at this rate, they won't. They will not have that. So what will they have? What can they want? What can they expect? Well, they're forging another way of thinking about the world. I do think people are genuinely looking to cooperate rather than to kill each other. I think that's a very, very basic instinct in people, that they would rather not kill or be killed, but figure out another way to do it that might be more fun. So I trust in that instinct, the way I trust in laughter. You know, it's very hard to fake that. If you can fake it, you know, but you can't fake a real laugh. It's your body will tell you that it's true. So, you know, and that's what instincts are for. We can all say, you know, I believe this, I believe that, I hope this, I hope that, but, or my mind tells me, or my instinct tells me. And all of those come into play, but when it really comes down to it, I would choose my instinct over my rational mind. I choose to imagine something that is, I feel completely achievable and hopeful, and another way to look at the world, because this one is actually collapsing, and one way or another it will collapse. There's no doubt in my mind that it will collapse. So then what do you really want? What kind of world do you want to build and live in? Looking at things falling apart can be exhilarating, because you realize they should fall apart. And there were too many problems. They were going to fall apart, and now they are falling apart. So when you look into the future and see that, I believe that we have the power to shape things. I find sadness very poignant. And besides, if you think about it, so much of music is made of regrets. If we didn't have regrets, we would have very little music. Willie Nelson is my favorite one in this case. He said, 90% of us end up with the wrong person. And that's what makes the jukebox spin. We know how it feels. But when I find this central part of myself, and I often try to find that part, there is something very, let's say I'm really angry, and I have to look through the layers, and at the bottom of that is a real soft place that is very sad. And I think I know everyone has that. And it's wrapped in a lot of different things, but if you peel it off, there's a kind of, and I don't think that it's because we're necessarily sad people, but we have that in us and that's part of what it is, to carry that, to be human. We know we're going to die. We know that, and that's part of that that it's such a brief thing. And so when I find that part of being a human being, I like to just kind of hold it for a second and kind of look at that, because it's part of our nature.